right now, a lot of the case studies is like, here is how you test one application in a good way. But that's not my problem. My problem is, how do I test 100 of these with limited resources?
This is Privacy on the Ground, where privacy meets real life. The shift to generative AI has exposed the gaps between data and AI governance policy and real-world uses and impacts of AI and AI governance tools. Tamara Widjaja can see the disconnects firsthand from his perch leading the AI research and AI governance team as executive director of AI at MSD, the global biopharma company some in the US and Canada know better by the name Merck Co. Tamara Widjaja is based in Singapore, but his work affects the company's approach to evaluating risk of AI systems it uses around the world. MSD, which operates in heavily regulated areas, has an important place in Singapore, which is home to its Asia-Pacific regional headquarters, as well as manufacturing facilities, an animal health plant, and research centers. So it's no wonder Tamara Widjaja has been involved off and on in AI Verify, Singapore's distinctive AI governance foundation, since its early days. I'm Kaye, World Privacy Forum's Deputy Director. During my talk with Tamara Widjaja, recorded in August of 2025 and featured in this episode, he told me that it wasn't until generative AI exploded on the scene that MSD found the need to engage with AI Verify more deliberately. Today, they're closely involved in the hopes of ensuring that he and his team are up to speed on the most appropriate evaluation benchmarks, governance approaches for agentic AI, and more. He's someone who's guiding AI governance inside one of the world's biggest biopharma companies. And hearing Tamara Widjaja's perspective on AI governance, on Singapore's AI Verify program, and how the actual tools of AI governance are used is immensely valuable. And I've had the opportunity to keep in touch with him since World Privacy Forum began our research on AI governance tools from governments and NGOs in 2023. This is the third episode in our Privacy on the Ground series about AI Verify and its evolution as an AI governance initiative. If you haven't already, I encourage you to listen to the first episode of the series. It overviews AI Verify, its various projects over the years, and how it's grown and changed as an organization. You'll get important context to help grasp some of the nuances of my talk here with Tamara Widjaja. And please check out another great interview in this series, my talk with April Chin, co-CEO of AI evaluation company Rosaro. They're a company that has worked with MSD and extensively with AI Verify, and they're mentioned here in this talk. As for this episode, you'll hear Tamara Widjaja and I discuss the challenges of scaling AI testing and selecting appropriate metrics, the importance of inspecting a full system in which AI models interact rather than just standalone models, and the potential lack of access to information about models and systems used in the highest risk scenarios when it comes to evaluating those models and systems. Here's my talk with Tamara Widjaja. with AI Verify, I first met you and spoke to you when AI Verify was younger and felt a lot different to me anyway. And I'm really curious to hear maybe, so you were using the early, or at least you had worked with them a little bit early on, and now you've reconnected with doing some work with them through their AI Global Assurance Pilot. I understand. How do you want to, maybe you can just give me like a little overview of some of the work you've done with AI Verify in conjunction with MSD?
Yeah, so MSD is a member of AI Verify Foundation, and that is not that's also quite recent. I think it was not the case the first time that we had this discussion, and I think a lot of it has to do with the scope of AI Verify as well. Previously, the good thing about AI Verify is that they are a technical community and they look at like systems and not just models. But previously, I think the world was quite different in terms of data science and AI, where the models were models that internal teams had full visibility and provenance of the data. Testing that was actually less interesting to us because we already had visibility of the data, and there was probably not so much that AI Verify would add on top of what we were doing internally. But with Gen AI, the world has, as you know, it has changed a lot. We're talking about massive models that are opaque, hiding behind API with limited documentation, lots of benchmarks, but not really like how the data, what data was actually in the model, and so on, and how the training was done. So all of a sudden, internally developed systems using these large Gen AI models became like an increasing risk, and so we had to look at it. The pilot itself is, I think, like more like a snapshot of emerging practice, because Gen AI testing is a very sprawling and rapidly evolving area. There are hundreds, probably thousands of benchmarks out there. Even among the vendors, there is not much standardization, and so we do have. I would consider ourselves a fairly technical, fairly sophisticated customer with internal teams able to, assess the vendors quite robustly. But even among the big players, there was no standardization, and even among the academics, there was no standardization. So it's like we needed an independent community and third-party view to kind of share with us, where the baseline was at in terms of good practice, and that's why we reached out. And so I think our goals align quite well, both with AI Verify as well as with a third-party vendor called Rizaro, who's like an independent assurance tester, which we worked with in conjunction with AI Verify.
Right. It's interesting that with this global assurance pilot, which is one of the more recent AI Verify efforts, they kind of acted as a connector between these assurance companies, or just private entities doing different assessments and assurance kind of uh, offerings or services, and then companies like yours, and pairing them together and just kind of letting it do its thing. And we'll talk about what the project was that you used Rosario for, and how all that happened. But can you just maybe give me a little reminder of MSD as a company? I mean, you guys are a multinational pharmaceutical company. Most people in the US know you as Merck, right?
MSD is like a global biopharma company. We operate in over, I think, 60 offices, over 60 locations. Within MSD, I think it's like as a top 10 pharma. Our roles are global. So the chief AI officer is based in the US but has a global remit. I'm based in Singapore. I report to him. My role is global as well.
All right. So, Jason, the global assurance pilot felt a little more relevant to MSD, right? And just it sounds like maybe even the earlier generative AI kind of benchmarks and things that AI Verify has been, there's been some guidance put out related to generative AI benchmarks and assessment approaches in the past maybe year or more. And so it sounds like there's just been more relevance maybe than there had been in the past, in part because you had, as a company, more knowledge of what was baked into the models that you were using because
Yeah.
right, and now you're dealing with foundation models that you have less insight into, and
Yeah.
I'm guessing, kind of customizing them. And then maybe would it make sense to just talk about the Rosaro project, the actual system that you assessed through this global assurance pilot?
Sure. I think just to clarify, for MSD, we actually worked with Rizaro before joining the pilot. It just so happened that Rizaro was in the pilot, and so there was a nice dovetail of us through our existing Rizaro collaboration to plug into this global pilot. So for some companies, I understand it's the other way around. It's the pilot that kind of matches the company to the provider. For us, we had already done a provider assessment between Rizaro and other providers. We went with Rizaro, and then later on that kind of connected into the pilot. So that's just the background for MSD. In terms of the projects, we basically have two projects, and they are kind of like two classes of projects. So you have your classical ChatGPT type chat system. So we have an internal private version of the chat. We call it a part of our GPTO product line. I think this is public knowledge. And it's a general purpose system. So it's like released to the whole company. If you imagine what ChatGPT is, it's very, very close. And the defining thing is that it's a general purpose system. The other thing is more like a transformative use case, where it's like within the company, for our research organization, we do we have a number of research oriented like accelerators, AI projects, and this is like more narrow, like task focused, narrow based, very similar to classical data science projects, where it's not about like chatting, it's about a specific Gen AI use cases. So we basically wanted to do one general purpose AI system use case, one narrow transformative research use case. That was the way we were thinking about it.
Yeah, and okay, I don't know if you can go into any more detail or give us a sense of what kinds of are these both systems that were already in use?
Both of them are internally developed, so you have kind of full control of development, but no control over the model, and that's the issue. So we use, currently I think very few companies in the world would be building these like foundation models from scratch. So the normal modality is you plug in a massive foundation model into your internal backend, connect it with internal data through workflows and RAG, and I think it's actually RAG is used as a bit of a throwaway term. There's actually lots of optimization, pipelining, and workflows that goes behind these systems. So external foundation model, internally developed, and both in use. The first one is a lot more mature than the second. The GPTO, our internal Gen AI product line, was released, I believe, around August in 2023. So it's been used for like close to 2 years to date. The other one is like kind of in like small pilot test mode because it's quite a complex project.
Yeah, and both of these are kind of used in internal business type.
So yes, we are primarily internal. We do not like sell our software to customers. We do have a small number of like a patient facing of like Gen AI products that support patient facing functions. Those are really rigorously tested, often reviewed, sometimes shut down if they are risky, and so on. So
And we're talking about things that are more in regard to research operations and more business operations type purposes. Not we're not talking about like drug discovery or something.
I'll think of it as like kind of business transformation, business productivity, a big bucket of like productivity related. We call them accelerators, but that's what it is.
Okay. So, I mean, it's interesting. You were already working with this company, Rosaro. What did AI Verify kind of bring to the mix? Like having AI Verify as this, you're doing this project with them under the auspices of this organization. What did they bring out of the project for you, or what was different from maybe how you had already worked with Rosaro?
Yeah, it's interesting because what we needed is like a credible third party, like assurance group to come to help us figure out what good looks like today in this fairly new world. So that was the Rizaro engagement. But where Rizaro sits in relation to like the rest of the industry, there are, I believe, last count OECD, over 1,000 of these like governance frameworks and strategy documents and all these things. So AI Verify is that next layer. Like, how do you know that Rizaro is credible, and how do we plug into like international things because we are a global company? Much as I'm based in Singapore and I like to visit offices down the street and so on, the reality is that we are really we prioritize like global things over local things, and we did need like connections into the global AI assurance technical community. So through AI Verify, a lot of it is like peers. We attended a number of the events. We met providers based outside of Singapore, as well as international groups. For instance, we got to know ML Commons through them. And ML Commons, again, is one of those among many emerging open source groups, which ones are larger, more credible. And for a company like ours, we need to go after like the big rocks. And so I think that was where we were thinking AI Verify fitted in.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I have kind of gathered from the evolution of AI Verify is it's as an observer, it looks kind of like a place for networking and meeting people in your community. And it's interesting because it came out of this, maybe more of a direct connection to policy, or at least it felt a little bit more like that. And, this was a question I was going to ask you a little later as a big picture question, and we can talk about it later too, but I don't know. That's just an aside. It just feels like it's evolved into something that's kind of like a people who are trying to figure things out, right? The policy before was a little more clear because we knew, you wanted to test for fairness, or to test for bias in a model, or you wanted to test for explainability or robustness. And there were these tools that AI Verify had, and then generative AI really pulled the rug out from under everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. From the perspective of a company like MSD, there's a lot of noise in the industry, and a lot of it comes from not independent parties, who basically like vendors who try to sell you professional services, thought leadership in the guise of like lead generation, product companies who kind of like define governance as whatever their product will do and so on. And the community we are after is not really like give me like 20 vendors to sell me stuff. It's like all you want to do is to find other advanced, sophisticated companies who are figuring out on their own and trying to learn from them, as opposed to a professional services firm, a product vendor, and so on. So I think that was big companies get invitations from large cloud providers, big consulting firms all the time. I think that is not the direction that we wanted to network in. We wanted to find peer companies, internal buy-side groups that are trying to navigate, multiple, like what the world looks like in the reality of multiple vendors, multiple tools, and so on. So I think we tried to be a bit more discerning on, what communities you plug into as well.
Can we talk a little bit about some of the specific tests that were involved in the assurance pilot? That was one of the things that AI Verify did. They set out some parameters for the pilot projects, and they said, these things have to involve technical testing, for example. They have to involve systems that either are deployed or are planned to be deployed. They can't just be like a little toy project or something.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tell me about some of the tests.
So I think the way we were thinking about the test is like my team is familiar with the individual benchmarks. So for a model, you will know like MMLU, human eval, all these different benchmarks. And a lot of the benchmarks depends on the task as well. So for instance, the big providers, they use like, MMLU or MLU Pro for like general language. But for us, we think about it as like, I'm going to use this model for this internal use case. This internal use case happens to be translation to an Asian language. So I need to not use MMLU, but use a different set of like metrics. So the sets of metrics, there are so many of these competing metrics that we're not sure what's a good set to use. If I pick one, it may not be fit for purpose. If I pick like 20, like you overwhelm the project teams. So we tried to, our remit to Rizaro is we'll give you the categories and you tell us what's a good set of benchmarks that will capture the majority of the category. And the categories are, you have these data science, AI, science benchmarks based on tasks. That's one area. We also have a set of like safety benchmarks and a set of security benchmarks. So these are the three categories: performance, safety, and security. And traditionally, they are often done by more than one team, but we wanted to get a coherent view that for a GenAI system, give me these three buckets and, let's look at them. So not all metrics sit nicely in one bucket. For instance, the most common one, hallucinations. Some people think of it as like, scientific performance, like how many errors it makes. Some people think about it in terms of like, is it safe because it hallucinates? So it's not it doesn't help to have three departments attacking a project and trying to do like sets of metrics. We wanted to get like a coherent, holistic view of like, give me a right size set that is like Goldilocks, not 1 and not 100, that covers these three buckets. And this is what we want to use as our internal thinking to eventually scale up testing across the company. Yeah.
It's interesting because your approach and what I've seen in throughout AI Verify documentation and just in general when it comes to generative AI, assessment, it seems like the stuff that we were talking about a few years ago when it comes to assessing AI, the things like fairness and explainability, that it's just like they're not discussed anymore. And it's very interesting to see this, what seems like a real shift happening.
Yeah.
And it's happening in a way where around the world too, right? You have a lot of purview over what happens in lots of different areas around the world. Do you see this shift occurring where it's like, we're talking about performance, safety, and security. We're not talking about a model being fair necessarily.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I think my reflection of it is that part of it is because it's a general purpose AI system, not a use case specific AI system. When we think of bias and fairness, mostly these are like, for instance, a HR use case, a churn use case, these kinds of things which are extremely narrow. The second thing is that these are structured data use cases versus unstructured data use cases. Unstructured is like what the word means. It's like unstructured, and there's many ways to, many lenses you can use to evaluate language. I think what is like maybe a bit frustrating for the people working in this point in time is that we do expect some semblance of testing standards to emerge over time. In the same way that in the real world, when we think of like how good a student is in language, you have like the SAT, the TOEFL, the GMAT, and so on. But right now you have like 1,000 universities, which are basically like the people writing papers or like developing models saying that use my test, use my test, use my test. And we're not sure which of these tests will end up being like the SAT and TOEFL of GenAI. And that's like the troubling time we are kind of in, at least for now. We think over time it correlates a little bit, but now it's still not very clear to me.
Those three categories of assessment, the performance, security, safety that you told me about, are those internal like MSD things, or were those what AI Verify asked you to look for?
This is kind of the way I think about it in my brain, because they also like different functions. So if you are like a project team, you're thinking about how accurate am I, what's my latency, all these performance related things. But if you are like governance, governance has an AI component and a cybersecurity component. The cybersecurity component assumes like bad actors. The safety component is like more unbounded, and it's like the way we describe it is that security is keeping the system safe from bad people, and safety is keeping the people safe from like bad systems. There are complementary scopes and skill sets, and different tests for each. So there are like, for instance, like cybersecurity, like data poisoning, data bomb injection kinds of tests. That's very security. But also things like hallucinations, things like toxic generations, unfiltered content. This is more on the safety side of the house, I would say. So broadly, we bucket it into three, because our teams internally are like kind of structured that way. So I said, internally, I'm really not in the place to be able to argue like academic semantics and like your definition, my definition. I have three teams and I need them to not overlap. And so that's the way it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Were there specific benchmarks or metrics that AI Verify wanted you to assess according to? I mean, you talked about how Rosaro kind of you
Correct.
asked them, what should we use? But was there anything from AI Verify where they said, we really want you to use this particular test, or anything like that? Any guidance to that degree?
I think they provided resources, but I think the reality is that every application system level test is unique, and that's what makes it tricky. So two translation apps, both of them are doing the same task. If one is in medical, one is in say legal, the metrics become different. So lots of the tests are application specific and hard to scale. So there's no top-down approach from AI Verify saying you need to do test X. What they did give is they gave some resources. They have their Project Moonshot. And also they linked us up with various groups, like I mentioned, the ML Commons, which is one of the areas that we did eventually look into to get some metrics. That was from AI Luminate, I believe the group is called. In terms of the actual metrics, Rizaro is the one who, we basically contracted them to show us what good looks like in our space, and that's what they did. AI Verify just provided like resources on if you need like some examples on scale level granularity, here's resources, here's internal Project Moonshot stuff, and so on. But we ended up not going too deep into Project Moonshot because we had done some of our own thinking already. I expect some of our peers who are maybe a bit smaller might probably take on Project Moonshot as their toolkit.
One of the requirements that AI Verify had also was that the testing should be conducted on the application rather than the underlying model. And you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but what do you think of that approach?
It is absolutely the approach that needs to happen because to test a model and not test a system is like saying that you drive a car and you test the engine but you don't test the rest of the car. And from the research perspective, the performance of a system is dependent on a lot more things than the model alone. For instance, the moment you connect your model into a data set, a sprawling data set, like maybe your hard drive or something like that, the issues become not the performance of the model, but the quality of the data set, how the data set connects to the model. All these things are are not trivial. They're absolutely central to testing. So we don't need more model tests because to a large extent, the model providers themselves, they're incentivized to tell you how good they are. So they give tests at a model level, but the system level testing is on the system developers themselves. And so that is the scope you were looking at.
Yeah. Do you get the sense that, or was there any kind of monitoring by AI Verify to make sure some of these requirements were happening, or I don't know. I mean, I'm just curious to understand. You talked about resources, for example. In addition to maybe guidance, documentation, or being able to talk to someone, for example, was there, provision of like compute resources, or not that I guess MSD probably doesn't need that,
Yeah.
but I don't know, like what would be some examples of resources?
So I think our engagement with Rezaro was a lot deeper than our engagement with AI Verify, just because we started with Rezaro first. Also because I think we had done like some groundwork such that we didn't need to draw on AI Verify as much. But we didn't want to, I think, plug into AI Verify. Again, it's like a technical community. So I did send my team members to AI Verify events to look at, for agentic AI, how are you thinking about it? How's the, the different top universities and like independent companies thinking about like agentic testing, for instance, or security testing or red teaming for Gen AI. So we did attend quite a lot of these sessions. I attended some of them myself. Some of it I sent my team members to go like for free like technical training and consultation and so on. Besides that, I think the rest of that is like the project moonshot stuff and like metric libraries and so on.
Hmm. Were there people from the AI Verify staff or anything who were involved at all in your day to day or any of their work?
Not day to day. They do like they provide resources, they send stuff to us, they invite you to events, but for the project itself, we will not allow a third party to come and dig into our project without contracts.
Right. Yes. I imagine that's something we don't talk about too much when we talk about some of these AI governance kind of initiatives. What Singapore is doing is it seems pretty unique. Although, we've seen, I think, more and more examples of kind of connections between government and private entities working together on some of these things in other countries too. But that's a pretty important point that you just raised. Like, when it comes to the actually making this stuff happen, I mean, sometimes the contracts have to be in place and you've got to make sure that you're even allowed to work with the people you're supposed to work with to do these kinds of assessments. Is there anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, I think that's a very important insight, and it's often underappreciated when people are looking at it from like a 30,000 feet regulator angle. I think one of the things we got out of this experience is that the projects that need testing the most, the high impact, high value, high risk projects, they're the ones that people will access the least. The for regulated companies, the amount of hoops you need to go through to get access to what's going on in one of your high risk projects is very, very high. And so the way I think the industry will land is that for lots of these testing, it won't be like having large test vendors coming in to click your button and so on. I think that was okay in like, for instance, like mobile app testing because it's like functionality. But Gen AI is like very much tied into like internal data and so on. So I think we will end up having lots of internal system testing across the industry by the developers themselves. So to the extent that like large companies are developing their own systems or even deploying their own systems, and they choose not to trust the third-party model provider, they would do internal testing internally. I don't think you contract, 100 testers to come in and like start poking around systems. I don't think that's the future. I think the future is more like you mature your internal practices to do like self-service testing. And so what we need is a lot more tooling, a lot more education, and so on. Right now, a lot of the case studies is like, here is how you test one application in a good way. But that's not my problem. My problem is how do I test 100 of these with limited resources? And so, having any team come in is not really scalable. And so we're looking at, self-service tooling, education, automation, metrics libraries, guided testing support. That's the way I would be thinking about it.
Wow.
And I didn't know that previously. I was thinking like, oh, should I scale up a testing practice? But I think that's not. But I realized that due to data access issues, due to sensitivity issues, that is not the way forward, at least for us.
You said you didn't realize that earlier. When did you realize that? What were you I mean, was this just as generative AI has come into the mix, or is it while you were working on this global assurance pilot project, or
I think testing Gen AI systems, and that's important. It's like Gen AI systems doesn't apply for classical AI because it's auto-providence. Doesn't apply to Gen AI models because models are fairly standardized testing. We have automated model testing pipelines, but it's not possible to do automated system testing pipelines. System tests need to be done close to the system itself, done by the project team. And I think it's common for many large companies to have like third-party like testing vendors to operate the systems and so on, and we have like similar groups. But for AI testing, I think this is a space that AI system testing is a space that is I didn't appreciate how hard it is to scale testing in this space. So I think going through the exercise with Rizaro and AI Verify and the amount of effort it takes to test one app, to get access to test the app, to come up the unique metrics relevant to the app and to test it, it's just now I have a good sense of what it takes, and I think that's where I'm heading towards.
can you tell me about the outcomes of the global AI assurance pilot initiative, that your project? Or I get, you looked at two different systems. What did you learn? Did you make any changes as a result?
So I think I'll think of the outcomes at two levels. Firstly, for the actual testing itself, it gave us for the first time in the company, our own systems, how good they are, where the vulnerabilities are. So I think it's like insights in terms of where we can make our development approach more robust and so on. So that's what Rizaro was contracted to do. And aside from the systems themselves, I think the outcome was this is a target you can shoot towards for every other system. So I use that as a template for this is what testing look like in terms of dimension, in terms of granularity, in terms of the report categories, and we're trying to scale that across the company.
So it was something that helped you develop a template that you might use in the future and really understand what you might improve. It doesn't sound like you necessarily went in and made any adjustments in particular as a result of the testing.
So the system itself is newly the engagement was recently concluded. So the Rizaro team is presenting to the engineering and product teams at the moment, and they may make some changes.
And so that's interesting. Yeah. So is that the kind of reporting or results that would have to also, would AI Verify see that, or would they ask for that at all?
We will not share that. Yeah. I think AI Verify is not interested in the results of individual applications. They're not looking at like approaches and maturing the capability as a whole. They were very quick to add, even in our first meeting, that we don't want to get into like confidential sensitive things. We don't need to see that, and we know you don't want to share it with us, and so we're all good.
Okay, I'm just gonna have one last quick one here. Just about your overall thoughts on AI Verify's approach. Its evolution from just having these kind of automated tools for assessing fairness and things like that to the approach today. It's grown as an organization. It seems a lot different looking at it as an outsider.
Yeah.
What do you think about how it's evolved and how it compares with other AI governance approaches that you've encountered in your work?
Yeah, sure. I think AI Verify is a lot more relevant to us today because of the nature of the industry. And I think due to the fact that generative AI systems, the Gen AI is actually not just generative but general. That's what makes it hard to pin down. Because I can't govern by purpose. This is not like a HR prediction use case, a commercial forecasting use case. It can be used for a whole myriad of things. And so with that evolution, teams like I think the industry is a lot less equipped to figure out what tests to apply. If you were trained in like forecasting in classical, modeling, like you learn in university, here are the tests to figure out what a good forecast looks like. But for this general purpose systems, it's a lot more amorphous. Plus, there's all these emerging security, safety type risks, which also are not very mature. So I think in the environment, coupled with the fact that every system is unique use cases, you have like quite a gap in capability for testing. And so I think any input support is appreciated in that space. Maybe I'll end off with this. My remit is like help the chief AI officer manage risks. And right now, as we've gone from classical AI to Gen AI, I've lost kind of like I've no more. All my technical dashboards are not as useful anymore. I can't say that I tested that system for like false positives, false negatives, and all these things. So we are trying to mature testing and assurance as a capability within the company. And I think Kate, we've both been in this like environment for quite a while. If I look at across all the different players in this like AI governance space, in my mind, I kind of arrived on like there's three reasons why someone would tell a person to stop doing an AI project. Firstly, the law says so. Secondly, the company says so. Or thirdly, like that's a technical reason not to do so. And internally, we call it like the 3 Ps. Is it who is knocking at your door today? Is it a prosecutor? Is it a policeman? Or is it a practitioner? You go to an AI conference, AI governance conference, you kind of met all the people there. They kind of fall into these 3 buckets, either like a legal regulatory person talking about EU AI Act or something like that, a GRC compliance person, look at my policy, look at my process, look at my impact assessment, or like a data scientist or cybersecurity practitioner who's saying like, look at this technical paper, something is wrong. I think as we think about the different bodies besides AI Verify, I've seen them a lot more on the left-hand side. I've seen them on like, here's how you do your risk assessment. Here is a governance checklist, really much addressing the GRC and then somewhat to some extent the legal regulatory side. What is missing, partially due to the industry technology, partially due to not very good disclosure by the big AI companies. What's testing is the right-hand side. On the technical side, the practitioner side, I think there's a lot of maturing to be done, and that's where I think AI Verify like plugs in. I need to know like is my application hallucinating 1% or 10%? I can't get that like anywhere, but I need to know that, and we're just trying to plug these gaps on this side. That's how I kind of see testing. See like AI Verify sitting in relation to other groups. I do think that Singapore. I'm a Singaporean myself. I do think Singapore is quite good at standardized testing. So it's of all the different things they could choose to do. This area they're quite strong in. I've reviewed some other groups as well as part of vendor assessments, and I think it's quite a useful resource to have.
Thanks so much to Jason Tamara Widjaja for this talk and for being a helpful source for World Privacy Forum's AI governance tools research over the years. If you appreciated this episode or our full AI Verify series, I hope you'll subscribe to the Privacy on the Ground podcast, give us a review, and share it with others who'd be interested. I'm Kaye. Thanks so much for listening.